I'm glad to be here for this meeting. Water to any people is a special gift. And of course, land is a special gift also. And anytime I come to Spokane, I think of our ancestors that lived in this part of the area, fishing on the river there. First of all, I just want to thank the Creator for our lives. I come to understand that each day of life is a gift to do something good for ourselves, for our family, for our people, for the river, for our land, for the future generations. We give thanks to all of you for, being called or being chosen to follow this type of work or dream, if you want to call it. Anytime I'm involved in something, people that show up there are meant to be there. So I guess the Creator must have put something in your mind and your heart to see the value in the work that you do. We have a phrase in our language, never give up, whether you're fighting in the courts for issues that you see a value to fight for. So you never give up till the very end. And if you pray enough, pray hard enough, long enough, a lot of times things have a good outcome. So we come to special land here. I come here every time I come here to Spokane. I can just feel the ancestors, the spiritual ancestors that lived here. It's just that strong. So it's like coming home again sometime to come here to Spokane to see the falls, especially the river. A lot of issues that any people face, that our land face, the water issues. A couple of years ago, up in school, they put on a program. It was kind of like a play. It's called Rivers Calling. It was about all the fish that have disappeared out of people who used to fish for a long time. It was a powerful thing they did. It was held at the Fox Theater. We just thought it beautiful that we was involved, the Spokane Symphony Orchestra and everything else. It was just a beautiful thing to do, just to think about all the fish we've lost that people used to depend on long before Westerners came to this part of the country. It was just a beautiful thing, powerful thing, just to see display of the different names of the fish that we no longer fish in the river because the people used to depend on fish for livelihood. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. Thank Creator for giving you safe travel here. I hope you have safe travel home. But our work's always going to continue. To me, land is something sacred. I own some land, but I had to pay a high price. A lot of my elders passed on, so I inherited land. So to me, land's a keepsake. Because Elkoman, keepsake. So to me, I could never sell that land. The land takes care of the bones of our ancestors. How special land is. We're talking midnight cleanup. Sometimes you think about how the land's been scarred. I always tell people, look for the beauty in life. Go to the mountains, to the rivers, to the lakes. You come across mining areas where it's been kind of excavating stuff, but you kind of lose some of that peace of mind you're looking for sometimes when you're out in the woods and I come across an area that's been kind of clear cut. The forest's been clear cut, trees cut down. Come to the Midnite Mine area, Short Mine area. And when mining took place, it kind of left a big scar, and you feel kind of bad that it's not like it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago. But anyway, thank you people for being here, taking interest in supporting the cause of the cleanup. So we'll just say this prayer. Ask West Cooks Menschtem, Kuch Elstubatiats Art and tells Casculi Alstulik, Hesses Chichamaska, Kahudstud upon Katsiap Sinum, Kajstwatlu, Kakwil, Situ Camp Kajstwatlu, Camp La, Hawk Sheetlet, Tax Crosswit Aya, Cat between Aya Kumich. I brought this flag. It's from our BFW Post flag. Richard Eli, combat veteran from Vietnam, he was involved with the Hamburger Hill campaign, and he made this flag. Came back from the war, mentally scarred. A lot of that he couldn't sleep sometimes at nighttime, so he knew how to bead, and he did the beadwork. But that was just what he had to go through to be able to get through a night sometime, just keep busy and not have the PTSD drama that he came back with. So he donated this flag to the VFW Post, and I thought them being warriors, just like you're warriors in the sense that the work that you do, whether the river, for the land, for the Midnight Mine cleanup. So let's go and sing one verse, what we call the chief song, hangman song. And every time I sing this song, I think this warrior, maybe hoping that 100 years, 200 years, there'll still be people like they're put in this event tonight, but there should be people willing to stand up for Mother Earth, for the rivers, for the land, for the fish, for the animals. So I think what he thought about that. And I would think his prayer, his song he sang, could have been his medicine song, prayer song, traveling song. But I was thinking about his prayer reaching out, touching the hearts of Paula and Margot and Deb and other people that are involved in this type of program to kind of take care of the land. I'll just sing one verse of it, but this has a lot of history of our Spokane tribe, and Spokane people were fighting for their way of life against the U.S. soldiers and Colonel Knight back in the late 1850s. Hey, 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 way, yeah, way, yeah, yeah, way, hey, yeah, yeah, way, hey, 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 yeah, way, hey, 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 yeah, way, hey, hey, yeah, way, hey, hey, yeah, way, hey, 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 yeah, way, hey. Hey, 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 hey. So every time I see people doing this kind of work, I think of this warrior, that his prayer is being answered, that there are people, Indian people, Scully, loose Indian at heart, still caring for the land, the river, the water, all the things that people valued a long time ago. So with that, I say, Lemon Chaiho, so that's all, thank you.
And again, my name is Twella Abrahamson Swan. I'm a member of the Spokane tribe, and we have, Jerry listed out some of the speakers that are here today, and we just kind of want to give you an overview of the Midnite Mine itself and some changes that have recently been proposed to the site. And my presentation will be short, and I'll try to do my best to be a timekeeper so we have enough time for questions and some solutions at the end, so we can start to brainstorm, what people want to do and what's the possibilities right now. So right here is a couple of pictures, and this is a map from Spokane there. And our reservation, we have the Midnite Mine, the Don Mill site, and the Sherwood Mine. So 2 uranium mines and a mill site. This over here is the Don Mill site. And this is a site that's just adjacent to the reservation and operated by the same mining company. One of the issues that we see as community members is that this is regulated differently than a federal Superfund site. So with EPA involvement, there's a lot more that goes into just being clear with the community, being transparent, sharing information, having public comment periods. So we'll learn about that with Midnite Mine. But we also have another site adjacent to the reservation that's creating problems where we don't have that same access to information and we don't have an option to participate in the process. So we want to make sure we can use our energy and our time as best as we can on the Midnite site, but also recognize that it's not the only site that's creating issues for our community, and that the solutions we need to take a step back and look a little bit further at the whole picture. The Superfund cleanup site on this side there is the Midnite Mine. It's a 350-acre site and has a series of open pits filled with mildly radioactive heavy metals and water. The EPA identified a cleanup plan for the site in 2006 that basically involves dumping all the contaminated soil into the open pits and then covering those pits. The contaminated water from the Midnite Mine will be treated at a new treatment plant before it is being discharged into Blue Creek, which flows into the Spokane arm of Lake Roosevelt. And one of the elements that Newmont is asking to lower the regulations on is called radium. And so I wanted to share a little bit with you. We didn't get to talk about it at one of the last meetings, but just what is radium and why is it, and why is it a concern for community members? Operations at the Midnite Mine have exposed and spread heavy metals and radionuclides in both the soil and the sediment. Previous analysis of dust collected at the mine showed a wide range of alpha, beta, and gamma emitters. The size of the particles is the biggest concern. Most of the radioactive particles range in 1 to 10 microns in size, so that's a lot smaller than the size of one strand of hair, which means that it can be easily inhaled and trapped in your lungs. So after it's lodged in the lungs, the particles continue to release radiation, and they can emit this exposure over the person's whole lifetime. So radium it's another one of those substances that, it's not going to make the water bright orange or bright red. You're not going to see it. You're not going to smell it. So we have a few of those on the site that the damage that they do is once they're inhaled or once they're digested. Very natural in the soil, so you may hear that in some of the arguments that radium is everywhere, but definitely higher near uranium mines in the wells, and it also can concentrate in fish and other animals, which creates an issue for those that eat fish out of the river and other animals. So here's a map of our state, Washington State, and the risk of radon based on geology. So it said, it's definitely in the soil everywhere, but you can see in the red, we have areas around us and here in Spokane as well that are very high in radon exposure. And so radon and radium, they kind of go together. They're part of a decay chain. I have a short video that will explain it a little bit better. And just talks about how we're exposed to radium and what that means for our bodies.
It's a scientific fact that radon exposure can cause lung cancer. In fact, it's estimated that 15% of all lung cancer fatalities are caused by radon exposure. But did you know that radon, which is a noble gas, doesn't actually cause lung cancer itself? It's true. It's the byproducts of radon that can cause lung cancer. Let me explain a little further. Radon is created from uranium, which is a mineral that lives several layers into the earth. In its natural state, uranium can change into radium. During this transformation, the noble gas radon is released. It then travels out of the earth and gets trapped in our homes and buildings. At this point, the radon goes through another transformation. This time, new radioactive elements are released into the air. Unlike radon in the gas form, these new elements are solid and can stick to surfaces, such as dust particles in the air. Attached or not, these elements can be inhaled by humans and pets. Once inhaled, the radioactive elements can mutate the DNA cells found on the soft tissue of the lung. These mutated DNA cells are cancer cells. So in summary, the natural breakdown of uranium into radon and then into radioactive elements that can be inhaled into your lungs causes the risk for developing lung cancer to increase. To reduce your risks of developing lung cancer, it's recommended that you reduce your radon levels as low as possible and filter out the radioactive elements. For more information, consult with your National Radon Defense dealer or visit us at nationalradondefense.com.
So I'm a huge advocate for radon testing in your homes and buildings, but we're here to talk about radium. And one of the things that is in all the reports is it talks about radium traveling long distances, even in just moderate winds. Any activity that creates or releases dust from the mine and its surrounding represents a potential hazard. And then activities that result in increased or heavy breathing pose a risk when you're exposed to this contaminated dust. So all of the time they're talking about, right now, Newmont wants to lower or increase the standard for radium. And they're saying that they're having to continue to dig and dig and dig and get more materials out that they didn't estimate. But at the same time, we have to keep our workers in the thoughts, because when they're talking about the more materials that they're digging, the more, the more activity that they're doing, that's our people that are being exposed to those contaminants. And there's also spreading it more around the reservation. Here's a overview, and this is of the Dawn Mill site. And one of the things that we wanted to point out, in 2014, 1.5 million cubic yards of soil was placed for radon barrier at this mill site, 6.5 feet deep over 61 acres and 10 feet deep over 86 acres. At the Midnite Mine, they have estimated a certain amount of cubic yards for a 3-inch cover. And what we've seen them do is continue to purchase land adjacent and on the reservation, and they're clear cutting the land, and they've already grossly underestimated 2 projects where they thought they only needed so many feet of soil, and it turns out they need more than that. So we're coming at that again where they've underestimated, and what happens is the footprint keeps getting bigger and bigger. We're seeing chunks of land clear cut, and it seems like little to no regulation going on. Nobody's stopping them in their path. So we're thinking this is supposed to be a cleanup process. We're waiting, and it feels like more damage is happening to the community, especially after these clear cuts, especially after the flooding that we've seen. Here's an older photo of the lower Midnite Mine area, and that little box there is one of the properties that the company was able to buy. And the community was not happy about this in the first place, this sale. We tried to stop it because we felt that they didn't need to continue to, again, enlarge the footprint of the mine site. So they bought this property in thinking they could get the clean soil they needed to cover the other site. So basically, they're doing more mining on the reservation adjacent in property that was unaffected by the mine. And now they're complaining that the soil is radioactive. So I don't know what they expected when they were digging next to a uranium mine, that they're going to find more radioactive soil. This is a little bit more updated view. It's a 2017 shot, but in that lower area is kind of where that land was. And we've seen, because it's close to the road, you can kind of see where a lot of erosion has happened. They've taken a lot of soil, they've taken a lot of ground, and I don't think they were expecting the amount of water that followed in that part of the construction. What we were told is that they may require over 60 million cubic yards of materials when they originally estimated that they would only need 20. So that's where the company is coming at right now. And they also, it is a little bit more complicated because there's only 24 million cubic yards of room in the old holes. So that was their original plan, fill these old holes with the contaminated waste rock, with the contaminated materials. Now they've already almost filled one up because they're having to remove more soil around the site. So for our community concerns, and we can go into these later also, but we have the health issues that are a concern to the community. And just the fact that this is such a complex site. It's so different from a lot of the other Superfund sites and mining sites around the nation, because hard rock mining has its own set of environmental concerns and contamination. But since this is a uranium mine, the radionuclides bring that to another level. And then right now we're in the midst of a huge staff turnover. So not only with EPA, with the tribe, everybody, it seems, that has been involved in this project is now moving on. And it seems, we feel like all the time we're starting over with brand new people, and the community members are doing the education. And so it creates issues, and it creates stalls in the process when we're just hoping to get this site cleaned up. Our community has limited access to technical resources. So every year, the support from EPA has gone down and down and down. So since we've been involved, my mom's been doing this since I was in high school. And, the resources, it's on a downward curve as far as what's available to the community. So while the resources for community are going down, the promises to the companies are going up. These international mining companies are asking for favors, they're getting those favors, and we're seeing across the board that they're trying to deregulate the nuclear waste classification, which would affect Hanford and a lot of sites. And so basically we just see them continue to ask for more deregulation, which helps put money in their pocket. But for what we see is we're working with one of the largest mining companies in the world, and we have to stand our ground, and we have to make sure that this cleanup is done right and that the community stays involved, the community knows what's going on, and that we're part of the solutions as well. So thank you, and we'll have time for questions afterwards. Up next, we will bring Linda Myers is the new EPA project manager for the Midnite Mine site. So let's bring her up and we can welcome her.
So hi, I'm not new to EPA, clearly I've been in this business for a while, but I'm new to this project. I've been on it for 2 weeks. And I was brought in to a meeting. The mining company brought their proposal for changing the cleanup standards for soil. So that was my first exposure and involvement in this project. So Twella did a great job. I learned some things. And like you said, there's a lot of turnover and a lot of people retiring. So the last 2 site managers on this project have retired. I see a trend there, huh? But thank you all for coming out tonight to participate in this. It's great to see people interested in the work we do. Particularly on the cleanup standards for this mine site cleanup, the company has made a proposal, and our job is to evaluate that proposal. And it will be based on a technical assessment, which will take some time. It's not a given that we're going to make any changes. The record of decision is the document we put together to establish the cleanup levels and the work that they need to do. And that took quite a number of years to get in place. And then the legal agreement that makes them follow the cleanup plan. Also, again, these agreements take some time to put in place. If there was technical credibility to the proposal they have, we would go through a process to change the record of decision with public involvement. So me as the project manager, that's my job, is to evaluate the credibility of the proposal they have and ensure that it's technically sound. And then I would recommend to my management we would make changes, but not until then. And we would involve the community along the way. So we would present those details to you of how the changes that they have, proposed. At this point, we are just in the very initial stages. I'm lining up some technical folks to look at the data and the statistics, and until we do that, it's likely that's as far as it will go, is they've made a proposal. So I just, that's as far as that part of the project. But I do have a new community involvement person, Kay Morrison, and we are going to, I did look at the website and our community involvement plan, and a lot of things are outdated. So we are going to work on getting the community involvement plan updated. So if you have a contact, I've gotten some letters from folks, so we'll add you to the email list. I try to be responsive to your emails, so feel free to contact me if you ever have any questions. I'll find the answer, because I probably won't know it for a while here. But yeah, I look forward to working on this project and keeping them on task and getting the site cleaned up. So, and we're working on the community involvement plan. So Kay will seek some input from you on the best ways to revise that and how you want to participate in kind of the overall cleanup program as we're going along.
Can you give us your email?
Sure. Do you want me to just shout it out?
Yeah.
It's Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R, .Linda at EPA for Environmental Protection Agency, EPA.gov. And if you go to the Midnite Mine, type in Midnite Mine Superfund Cleanup, I should be on the front page there. And we're going to work to get our website updated and get the information repositories, get some information that's meaningful to all you. So if this was something we looked at, would evaluate this cleanup and the background changes, we'll make sure that all that background information is available and electronically or at the library, and make sure you have the information that you're interested in. So, thanks.
there's a lot of things I'm involved with. I was at the last meeting with Linda, and I do appreciate her accepting this. I don't know if it was like the short straws in the office, and she's like, okay, you lost, you get this one. And Joe's laughing because Joe Wallace gets to leave, and, it was like our last meeting. He's like, well, my final comments to Linda are going to be, and then by the time I got home, it was all Linda. It was all the emails from her. So Joe, he was laughing when he got that. But I hope Linda can stick with us, and because we do spend a lot of resources in educating, getting to learn about the project and what are the resource concerns. So that's a big expense of the tribe and the community members is informing the public on that. So if you're coming down the Spokane River, and the Spokane River is the southern boundary of the Spokane Indian Reservation. It includes clear to the south bank, which water is so important to the Spokane tribe that when they established the reservation, they said, we're not going to just split it like in most counties and just say halfway. It's going to be the whole river. As is Shimikan, as it runs up along the Shimikan watershed on this side, and then the Columbia River on that side. So on three sides, it includes the entire body of water. So just to give you a context, right down here is where the Spokane River dumps into the Columbia on down to Grand Coulee Dam. Now you notice a few scars on the land here. This is Midnite Mine. This is the Sherwood Mine. Here's Wellpinnet. And then, the Dawn Mill site you can see right here. So all in all, out of 160,000 acres starting from this parallel down, that's some pretty good scarring. This was not done by Midnite Mine. This was a separate company. It was still about the same time period looking for uranium. This has since been reclaimed. And you can see some of the scarring. If you're ever out along the Spokane River and look up when you're in the Narrows, you can see some of the scarring from the land that's there. So let me zoom in a little bit here now and move over to talk about the Midnite Mine. It's much darker up here, but so the Midnite Mine is within the Blue Creek drainage, and back in the day when they didn't have a discharge permit, but as the pit 3 started filling up in here, we started seeing some calcium deposits and which they weren't capturing, and we're noticing that contamination was showing up down. It was downstream, and we're worried that they were worried. It was before my time that risk would slough off, and we'd have a big mass failure of contaminated waste down the basin. So they built the treatment plant, and have been running that ever since. The treatment plant sits right in here and discharges into the eastern drainage, comes down, and then comes down Blue Creek. And essentially under Superfund, most of you may be familiar with the dischargers in Spokane. They have a discharge or an NPDES permit, but under Superfund they kind of get a get out of jail free card, so to speak, because they kind of have to comply with the intent of the law, but not necessarily all the details. And so when they were discharging, they were still using a settling methodology, and it's quite effective. Some of the concentrations that are collected, you can think of this as all waste, and they collect it at these ponds down here below, and they call it the blood pool and the waste rock pile pool, and there's still numbers that are very high down below these pits. Some groundwater seeps that they're not capturing. They try to pump that up into the pit 3, run it through the treatment plant through the summer. They'll run 24 hours for 4 days, and then they'll stop. Well, every time they do that, there's a pulse of high conductivity water, because they're treating that water, comes down the creek and impacts the fish. We have fish all the way up Blue Creek, all the way extending well past the mine, where the mine drainage comes in. So the conductivity spikes, and then 4 days later it drops, and then it spikes again. And also there was other radiological waste going down there. So as part of the record of decision and the cleanup of the Superfund site, it was determined that it was better, and it was resource staff and EPA and the mining company. There are certain things when they treat, they can't get rid of in such a small body of water like Blue Creek. Like I said, it's flowing. Base flow might be 4 CFS, 2, and at the mouth sometimes it goes dry. It does stay perennial, year-round flow through everything all the way to about here. And sometimes right at the mouth it might go dry. We do have big rainbows that run up there in the spring and spawn, so it's a tribal resource. Tribal members are down there harvesting fish, and we've kind of, we're like, well, man, guys, I'm not sure you should be eating those fish, because of the potential contamination of them coming into the creek. But those fish still exist. They're still coming up into the stream. We don't know at what reduced level. We perceive it's much reduced than what it used to be. Anyway, so they applied for an NPDES permit to discharge, but not to discharge here into the eastern drainage and into Blue Creek, but to actually, part of the remedy was to create a water treatment plant. And if you look on the scar here, this is what kind of initiated this whole conversation about the background, is this scar right here was called the construction support zone. And in that area, Dawn Mining in Newmont claimed that, well, that was undisturbed. It was undisturbed area. And in fact, we showed them pictures of this in the 70s and the 80s where there was piles of stuff there, and there was truck roads there. It was not undisturbed. And so we're saying, well, no, you thought maybe it was undisturbed, and you thought it was maybe going to be low, so you maybe didn't plan for how much soil was going to be put into the pits, but it was disturbed, and that is under the rod. You have to clean that up. And so at our latest meeting, they come in and said, well, this is the reason, and there's another pit. This is a current Google Earth shot, whereas you look on an older shot of the site. This is pit 3, and pit 4 is just above it, and they're starting to fill this in. But if you look at the pit 4 overburden, it's what they would have pulled off of the top of the above the mine that wasn't valuable. Could have been topsoil. Other thing was what we call overburden, and all that was placed up there on the top. And they say, well, we don't monitor below that. We don't collect anything, any wastewater that comes off of there. So we're worried that the same thing that happened here will happen up there, and it's an unknown. And so I'll get to that at the end. But that's where they're going. They're saying, well, we don't know, and so we want to look at addressing background. Essentially, though, instead of discharging here to eastern drainage, the new water treatment plant, because the water treatment plant sits right here, and it's built on top of waste rock, and so the water treatment plant has to go anyways to clean up the site. And so just at our last meeting there in Seattle, they said, well, our plan is we're going to have to change that because we put it out for bid, and we got, worlds apart. And so our new water treatment plant is going to be treating a lot less water than the old water treatment plant. We're going to have to figure out a way to transition from one to the other based on our reduced water footprint and the need to treat water. And we knew that going in. The new water treatment plant will sit down in here, and the reason I picked that is because gravity will help everything flow to there. But they may have to deal with some high radiologicals in the parent material underneath the water treatment plant here as well. But they will pipe that then. Instead of discharging it into Blue Creek, all the water will be collected and treated forever from these two pits, pit 3 and pit 4. There's a vertical standpipe and a drain rock that's installed, and they'll collect that water and have to treat it. That's part of the remedy. And the water pipe will be piped then down, and actually we'll use a mixing zone down in, and it will come down in and dump into the Thalweg, which is the deepest part of the Spokane arm of Lake Roosevelt. And some people might say, well, dilution is the solution. And actually it is here, because essentially what they were doing was they were using Blue Creek, 4 miles of Blue Creek as their mixing zone. And so the impacts to the fish in that zone was much more invasive, we felt, than actually coming to a mixing zone down in the Spokane arm that within 200 to 300 feet, they can meet our tribal water quality standards. Now, our tribal water quality standards are not easily met, and EPA pointed that out to them. They said, well, we want an NPDES permit. We got to meet the tribal standards. And there was 2 constituents that they needed the mixing zone for sulfates, and they needed the mixing zone for some the uranium. But there's no way they could get treatment that low. But there was 2 constituents that they couldn't meet, and that was aluminum, because the receiving water, once it dumps down in here into the Spokane River, let me zoom over here. Here's the delta of Blue Creek, so it would come down here into Blue Creek and come here into Thalweg. Here you can see the old scar of the Sherwood mine, just upstream of there. But the reason to do that, and from a fishery standpoint, I didn't totally like the idea either, because it meant that water they're treating actually went into Blue Creek, and now they would remove that water and actually just take it down and dump it in Lake Roosevelt, in a creek that I'm struggling just to keep enough water in for some of the fish species. But it's what kind of water are they going to discharge into that creek that was the issue. So they have an NPS permit now. The Spokane Tribe issued a 401 certification, which we have the authority to allow them to that discharge or not, whether it meets our standards. And so it does meet our standards. They have to do some better water treatment up at the site to meet the aluminum. And then when it comes down and into that mixing zone, within a certain distance, the state also has issues here too, because it's the state waters kind of, their water quality standards apply, because the old Thalweg of the river was here, but now it's a reservoir, so that's kind of a gray area. But so we're in conversation with the state on that too. But when that diffuser, when that water treatment plant goes into operation, where they have to meet the tribe's water quality standards within so many feet below that diffuser. There's some other monitoring things they have to do and concerns we have. We're like, you're going to be putting cold water right down there with good oxygen, and it's like, I just hope a bunch of fish aren't just attracted to that spot. So we're hoping we told them they had to monitor that and things like that. So the NPDES permit is in effect. It is not. It won't go into true effect until the actual water treatment plant gets built. So now they will be operating under the old permit until that happens. But under our latest meeting, they said, well, we're treating 500. I think it was 500, and they expect to go down to 50 million gallons a day. And then we knew that in the record of decision design. But they said, well, at 500 gallons a minute, what happens when pit 3, right now they're using that as their water storage. Any stormwater that's collected off the site is pumped into this pit 3 and then goes through the water treatment plant. And so one of their work plans, at least they thought, was that they're going to have to, we knew this too, they're going to have to create a reservoir at the base of the mine. And we said, we don't really want you to increase your footprint anymore. If you do that, you have to create it within the fenced area. So right now there's a current fence around there to keep wildlife out. There wasn't always a fence there. I remember when we could go up, you saw, Deb, you saw your picture in there, and I'm sure, you could just drive up there before. I mean, there was very little restrictions on, and especially for animals too. A lot of animals budded and congregated around the area, and those impacts were evident on them. But so anyway, that's where we're going for water. On the water resource side, I have been involved in the latest meetings, mostly because it's an interest to me and to my program, and in direction from our DNR director to stay abreast of the proposals to change background or to change that level. And so, I can answer more questions about that later, specifically to that. So,
yeah. So on most of the technical stuff, Brian did a good job of explaining that. There were concerns about the construction season starting up because of the radium-226 levels, and Don initially stated that we might have to hold up on the construction season. EPA kind of pushed back and said, well, at the very minimum, you're going to need a plan B. So instead of completely shutting down and saying we're not going to work, which was what their initial thoughts were, it was decided to move forward. Right now, they haven't changed anything as far as the construction season. It's continue to move in the waste rock into pit 4, and that's it. I mean, so the one thing that they did do, and that had nothing to do with the radium levels, was put off the water treatment plant for another year. Like Brian said earlier, they put it out for bid. They weren't seeing the numbers that they were liking, and plus there needed to be some adjustments there. So that isn't going to happen this construction season, but other than that, they haven't changed anything. I think initially it was a ploy to try to get people to say, well, we need to go to work, we need this, we need that, we need to, see if we can't pass the radium levels really quick and we can all go to work. That wasn't the case, so construction season resumes. As far as, I guess another quick thing, an introduction of what I do. I am the Midnite Mine Community Liaison. I'm a Spokane tribal member, reside on the reservation. And my job is to take some of those concerns, if people do have issues and concerns, contact me and I can find an answer. I am definitely not the technical expert. The tribe has hired experts. We have Brian Cleary, who is our environmental attorney, but we also have ABT as a contract employee that is assisting with specifically right now the radium issue. And we have folks like Brian and other people on the DNR staff that maintain the technical side of that. So I am more to get answers if there are questions, from community members, from outside organizations. If you guys have any questions, feel free to contact me. And I will leave my contact information as well. I wasn't prepared to do a presentation, so I don't have slides. I talked to Brian beforehand. We kind of collaborated on the pictures and stuff, but yeah, so just any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for coming to this, and I really appreciate being invited to this meeting, and I have made some notes because I get nervous and forget what I'm going to say. I do have I have business cards that have my phone number on it and my email address. Let me just say for folks who aren't familiar with the way that EPA works, EPA has a policy for community involvement at Superfund sites for meaningful involvement of people that are impacted by Superfund sites. And that means that we're required to provide the community with a plan for how we keep people informed and involved. And that's the community involvement plan that Linda mentioned that is very much in need of updating. So that's my job right away. As I'm getting up to speed on the site, I also need to get up to speed on what the community's concerns are. I'd like to find out how people would like to be informed. And by that I mean how. Do you want, is this a good place to have meetings? Can you invite us to communities' other meetings where people are already there and we could provide updates? Any suggestions that you have for ways that people could get information, and more importantly potentially to me, is how I can hear from community members about what your concerns are ongoing. I'm looking for additional concerns that we haven't already heard. Of course, we know that the community is concerned about their own health, our own health, the health of the environment, the health of animals, the health of the water, and the health of the earth. So any other specific concerns that you have, would be really helpful for me to help find information. And of course, I would work with Ricky Sherwood. Our technical folks work with the tribal technical staff, and our leadership works with the tribal sovereign government in a government-to-government consultation manner. I have some of these cards here, so if you send me an email, I'll put you on our email list. If you don't want to send me an email, you could call me and I would put you on our mailing list. Or you could go to our website and sign up for our mailing list there. And the website is epa.gov/superfund/midnite-mine. That's epa.gov/superfund/midnite. That's MIDNITE-mine. And you can sign up, and our phone numbers are on that site as well. So hopefully I've made sense. And if there is anything that I can help with.
I just had one question about previous contact lists. Do you have access to those, or
I
are they?
So I have an email distribution list from earlier community involvement coordinators, and I have, I think we've been using the mailing list that the tribal government provided to us for a mailing, but that doesn't include broader community members that are also interested that aren't, that I wouldn't be able to get the address from the tribal mailing list. So that would be one, a broader community interest to get information out to the community. We can do mailings by zip code, but it's a pretty blunt instrument. So, if there are people who are specifically interested in getting information from us by mail, that would be a good way. So I know that that will be available for answering questions.
Now we'll take some questions, and I'll try to get the mic to whoever is the best one to answer.
My name is Cheryl Joseph Butterfly. I'm a Spokane tribal member, 54 years old. I have a lot of questions, and I've had a lot of questions since my body has now since I've been young. I still live on the Spokane tribal reservation, and we've seen a lot of people die. We just buried my young cousin Kimmer to cancer. I lived on a spot on the Spokane reservation where the trucks constantly went through day after day. I walked around on that reservation, and I've been asking the question since, can the EPA please buy us water, bottled water? I'm scared to drink out of my faucet in my kitchen because I don't never feel like I'm ever getting an adequate answer. I live with a disease, RA, and I have many different kinds. I asked the doctor how I got it. He said it could have been environmental. There's many of us that suffer with lupus, lung disease. My sister has lung disease and lupus together, and she too lived from the time we were little. And the next door neighbors where they lived, there's 4 of them out of that family that suffer with brain disorders and have been hospitalized. This is my home. This is where I lived for all my life, and this is where I will live. And my generations, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren who are enrolled. We have to live there, a place where we learn to love. I've cooked meat. I'm one of the meat cutters, one of the butchers. Pray really hard over the meat when we cook in our cultural way for our people that die and for our visitors. My biggest thing for our tribe is prayer, and for the people out here. I was fortunate enough to be able to have my body long enough to work for 11 years for our culture office, and I worked on the river. I'm one of the retrievers of our ancestors' bones that are on the river. My grandpas, my grandmas, my cousins. That river means so much to so many people in this community, and we have it coming from every side. I'm here to ask the questions of the environmental part of the lupus, the arthritis, things that the brain sicknesses that our people are suffering with out there, and the cancer. I too worked with the EPA up there when I was working for our archaeology department, and I loved that job, and I pray that, but I can't do nothing anymore. I'm disabled at a young age, and they found the arthritis when I was 7 or 9. These are the questions that I've had, and to learn to live every day where you live and watch people die right and left in front of you. That is your family. and not to be able to do anything about it except for keep on praying, asking God to help us and our ancestors to stand with us. Ask Him to buy us water at least, bottled water free for our people out there. Lamps for listening.
Does anyone know if there's any cases where companies have polluted or water has been provided to communities?
I do know that with the contamination of the water in Airway Heights from Fairchild's PFAS and PFOA, contamination, which is a massive contamination worldwide caused by U.S. military forces, and it's a number of bases currently being profiled in the United States. But free water was provided in that community, at least for a time, and it was a very immediate response as that, kind of scandal, hidden kind of contamination surface. So yes, there has been that within the last year to year and a half that occurred.
I have a really good friend that lives out in Airway Heights, and she was concerned because she has the same type of health issues, rheumatoid arthritis, and she's young. And I had to bring her to get water because she didn't have a vehicle. And it wasn't the military handing it out. That was surprising. So there was some Boy Scout troops and other volunteers there, but it wasn't the polluter that was there providing for the community. So other people stepped up, and so I don't know. We might have to look for other solutions because that wasn't the military handing out water.
Gary Teal, resident of Spokane.
I actually have two questions. One, is it a technical obstacles that are keeping the project from moving forward, or is it financial? And the second question is, what percentage of the funding for cleaning up this area comes from the EPA or just from the company itself, the mining company?
So as far as obstacles to cleanup, they have us, as far as obstacles for cleanup, they have a schedule in the consent decree. And as far as I know, unless like my first 2 weeks, they're following a schedule. I hope it's the right schedule. I just got a list of all the activities they're planning to do this year, starting April 1st. So that's what I'm going to look at is, are these the right things? And then is this what in accordance with the agreement? I assume it is. And I assume we get to, EPA gets to approve the schedule and adjust it if it's not. But, so I think they're making progress, and it's on the schedule that's outlined in the consent decree. The changes to the cleanup standard, I think they were hoping they could have some kind of change made so then they could accelerate schedules and be done with the cleanup sooner. I'm guessing. I don't know. There was no schedule tied to the proposal, and there's no deadline, and there's no obligation on our part to, process that request for changing cleanup standards. So, and funding. It's all funded by the company. Yeah, so it's all funded by the company. So, yes, okay, Brian.
So it's funded by the company, but essentially the U.S. government was on the hook for part of this as well, but the government decided, well, here's our share, and we'll ante up, and Newmont took that and said, okay, we'll be responsible for the cleanup. So they took the government share of that money. So it's in their best interest to cost save wherever they can, because they took the government share already, but they are responsible for the cleanup now. There's no, there's no government tie to the cleanup parties. It's Newmont's cleaning up.
I just wanted to add into this that one of the issues that at the onset of this request is that there seemed to be, like the company put their proposal in, or they started initiating the proposal last July. And in looking back at the 5-year plan, the 5-year plan ends March 2019. And so my question in looking at this was, why are they going early? Why is this premature, this movement? And the concern is that they wanted to take advantage of the Bush administration's deregulation posturing. And that is very much a concern in terms of, let's look at those dates, because there are other dates where EPA, and we've got that information per company record, that they, within 12 days, they got approval for one of their requests, 1 day approval and another request. So those kinds of things we have to look out for, and that's what we're doing for our people. I don't know that this makes a difference in that 5-year plan, that it's supposed to end March 2019, but it was initiated in July of 2018. So if they want to stick to the regs, let's stick to what we're doing, what they're supposed to do.
Brian Cleary, where are you at? Do you have anything you'd like to add as far as their questions about the timeline and obstacles for cleanup?
Well, I deal with the guts of this all day long, so there's always this question of, once you start talking about the guts of it, at what point do people just start to fall asleep? Because this is very in-depth and technically based. No lawyer can fully explain all of this. All I can do is explain the process in which, and give some context for the process of what's going on here. The ROD, which was selected in 2006, sets the cleanup levels at this site. That is a decision that EPA made in selecting that remedy. It is based on an administrative record, and that is entitled to record review status. What you should take away from that remark is that trying to change something that's been decided upon the record is very difficult to do. The mere whim of one administration changing to the next does not de facto mean that the remedy changes. There is a significant administrative record behind the cleanup levels that were chosen in that 2006 remedy. To put things in context, the companies have come forward after an initial 2 years of the first year being kind of site construction development work, and then 1 full year of implementing the remedy after that. So they're now entering their 3rd year of cleanup at the site. They, in their 2nd year, did some background sampling at the site according to a sampling plan that they had EPA approve, and they felt that background levels needed to be revisited. This was something that at the time of the 2006 record of decision, those background levels that were selected, those are the cleanup levels. They're cleaning up to background, meaning what is it naturally, background at the site. That's what they're cleaning up to there, right? That was the subject of intense debate, technical debate and analysis according to EPA policies for selecting background at a site. That all is part of the administrative record. And at the end of that process, they selected the background levels that are stated in the 2006 ROD. Fast forward to the companies implementing that remedy now. As in the course of year 2 of implementing the remedy, they did some sampling around areas that they were working in the area of the haul roads, I believe it was. And they felt that based on that sampling and the experience that they were having at the site where they were digging down, that they were hitting background and being required to remove beyond that. They were hitting bedrock in their view, and that they were not, under CERCLA, obligated to mine the site and dig up native bedrock that was unimpacted by mining. That's their view. That is not my view. It is their technical supposition that they are trying to bring forward and revisit what was the background level selected in the ROD. They are on an uphill slope to convince EPA of their view that a different background level should apply to radium. They have not convinced EPA, as you've heard here tonight. EPA is just beginning its technical analysis of this. Moreover, concerns and fears over the changeover at EPA in terms of the tenure of people who've been project managers, the most recent of whom is here tonight, Linda Meyer. It's been here a couple weeks. There has been turnover, and that does have problems in terms of institutional knowledge. The tribe has technical people and legal people who have throughout kept close eye on this and maintain oversight as well. What's key here is that EPA has not made a decision. They appear to be disinclined toward the granting of an ESD of the companies. It requires a lot of analysis. It is important for the public to continue to remain informed as that technical analysis progresses. But the companies have an uphill road here to pave to get to what they want, which is a change in background levels. They feel that it's warranted. They have to make a technical case for it. And from what I can see so far in what they've brought forward as to technical grounds, those grounds are things that were visited in terms of how site background was selected going into that remedy, and they were put to bed at that time. They've not brought forth anything new. The sampling that they did last year does not support their position, so that they're not necessarily bringing that forward as an argument for changing background. They'd like to conveniently forget about that data that they collected last year. So at the moment, I understand there should be great public concern with the potential that EPA might make a decision at the company's request to change background levels. That's theoretically possible, but we're nowhere near any decision on that, and EPA has assembled its technical team. It takes time to do this. They have to go back through and revisit what happened in the past in terms of these decisions to get the background. They have to understand that. It's not something that just sticks with every employee, inherently. We just don't remember how we got to the background. You have to go through the administrative record, look up these things, understand it against the context of what the companies are asking for, and objectively figure out whether they've brought forward something that's unique, that wasn't considered before in selecting those background levels, and make a decision. We're nowhere close to that at this point. Work in terms of, okay, where are they now? They're entering the third year of the cleanup. Has this impacted their work? No, well, they have a lot to do up there. And whether this background level changes or not, they can still do a lot of moving of the proto-ore waste rock that's laying around up there. What they're talking about is a soils issue. What was the background level to which you clean up that was selected in the remedy? Now what's going on here is there's a lot of rock on the surface to be able to pick up and put in pits. That's not impacted by this decision at all. So they have a lot of stuff that they can do. EPA in September told them clearly, we've heard you on your proposal about the CSD. Essentially, we're not granting your request. In September, they basically said, if you're looking for an answer, at this point the answer is no. We'll continue to listen to you. But if you're asking for an answer about this ESD, the answer is no right now. And you better come up with, as Brian alluded to, a plan B for the coming field season to go out and accomplish work. There's a lot you can do out there that's not dependent on this, and it furthers cleanup. Their time trajectory for cleanup takes them to about 2024, 2025 for the completion of cleanup at this site. That is an obligation under the consent decree that they are legally bound by, and nothing has changed with that. They must meet that timeline. This ESD stuff is kind of a nice attempt by them to re-voice an argument they raised during the selection of the remedy process. Ultimately, my gut is it probably won't succeed. And more importantly, at the moment, doesn't change anything in terms of the cleanup. They still have those obligations and those timelines to clean up. Nothing has changed about what the background level is. So I'll pause there before you all go to sleep. But hopefully that gives you some more substantive, concrete information about the process, the timeline, things like that. One other thing, ESD is a more informal way of accomplishing a change in background levels. Here, what I thought you heard tonight from EPA is if, there's water to what they're saying, let's say, theoretically, if that was true, a far more formal process, in my opinion, should be a remedy change, which is far more formal. It's not a memo that changes the background level. It would be a full-on process, just like when they selected the remedy, with public notice of the decision being made, public input on the administrative record. So I don't know if that gives you any sense of assurance, but that is my expectation. If they did theoretically come up with a remedy change, they'd have to do it full-on in a record review type decision-making process.
You're dealing with multi-billion-dollar company, and I used to work for a company. It was a scrap iron place, and they had their cleanups. Just giving you a little principle here. One of the persons says, if they want something done, they'll get it done. And so when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're stalling. They're stalling because they don't want to really do it. And I don't know how the indigenous people could do this, but I would say this. Like there's other places, like when they pollute, they're fined so many thousands of dollars, $20,000 a day. And I would say that this company needs to be fined for every time that they fail, and that the money that they're fined should go to the tribe so that they can improve their lives, because their lives have been taken downhill, and they deserve some compensation. And this company, it has the money to compensate for their failures. And I just think that people should put their heads together and try to figure that out. And because I think that the tribe deserves that, because somebody's talking about water. Water costs money, these bottles. Well, part of that money can go buy water, Anyway, that's one I wanted to add to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's very true, because the other site that we talked about, the Don Mill site, is exactly that. So with the Department of Health overseeing the Don Mill site, they don't have the same regulatory arm that EPA has. They don't have the courts, the legal action to take against the company. So when the company isn't meeting their cleanup standards on the Ford Mill site, there's nothing that the Department of Health could come back with except for they didn't meet their mark this year. Again, they didn't meet their mark this year. So they were able to stall their project and their cleanup on that site a lot longer, and they still drag their feet on that one. So it's happening.
Hi, I have a question perhaps for Brian Cleary. To the extent that you can comment on this, do you know if there's a material effort for or a material risk of this becoming a political decision at EPA? I know there's been much news coverage about, during this current administration, EPA making decisions as political matters rather based on science.
I'd just like to ask, what about the tribe? Like Richard said over there, you need to go after them in court-wise, because they can stall. It's a political thing. Knowing who is the president today, and how are they going to change that? You got to be realistic. They got these people here talking, in circles. And if you really want to make some changes, I say that think about 2020, who are you going to vote for? Get them out of there. Get the president out of there, Get somebody in there that's going to put some teeth in the EPA, And what is the tribe doing? This is on the reservation, isn't it? See? The tribe can't get a lawyer. They can't go after that corporation.
We're working on it.
Go after them.
Hail Putisin Kasihu Putisin Kwali Putislich Louis Quest, Margot Hill. My name is Margot Hill. I'm a Spokane tribal member, and I grew up in Welpinit. And I would like to share with our EPA folks and all of our community members. First, I thank all of you for coming out and standing with us. Thank you. Because clearly, we've been fighting this for 25 years, and we can't do it alone. They don't listen to us. And so we want to say, we have followed your policies and procedures. We have did everything the government has asked us. You know, one of the classes, I'm an attorney, but I'm a professor here at Eastern. One of the classes I taught was administrative law, and we have environmental classes as well. We have done everything the government has asked to get this declared a Superfund site. We followed all your policies, everything. We have scientists, we have hydrologists, we've had all of the work done for this record of decision. Now is not the time to change it. We've been working at this for 25 years, and they move the line, and they stall, and they delay. And every year that passes, it's a critical cost to us. As tribal people, we still have sweat house. We still take our children to gather roots. We still pick our berries. We gather as women, as a community, and make baskets to go pick our roots. We are very, very traditional in our way in dealing with the land. We still interact with it. It's a high cost that we pay when this contamination doesn't get cleaned up year after year after year. This record of decision, we followed all your rules. And we can't have them now say, now we're going to move the line. Now we're going to change it. Now EPA has new employees. The tribe has new staff. They stall us out. This selected background levels was done. We teach our students best available science. That's what we've done all this time. And it costs us. 3 weeks ago, we buried one of our tribal elders from cancer. She lived in Ford along the Shimmikin Creek. 2 weeks ago, we buried my sister-in-law. She's 41, and she has 3 children. They are 9, 11, and 14. Before I came here, I work in this building. Before I came here today, I was at hospice. One of my coworkers is fighting 4th stage cancer. I will tell you, Linda and Kay, when I talk to medical providers and students that work at our clinic in Wilpinit, they said there is no explanation for these cancer rates. There's no medical explanation except for the area that we live and what we're subjected to. This company, Newmont, Dawn Mining, it's a shell game. When they hire natives, they hire it with Dawn Mining. When they hire non-natives, they hire them with Newmont, and they get benefits, 401k, healthcare, medical. They don't care about us at all. When they have a mill site in Ford, they have pits that have lining, and there's tears in the lining. And that contamination seeps right into our aquifers that goes into Shimmikin Creek. So we get it from Shimmikin clear to the Blue Creek area. This Blue Creek area where Brian showed you where the scars are, that was a traditional area where we had a medicine man and a lodge. That's what our tribal elders talk about. That was a healing place, a medicine place. And now it is a scar in our land, and they want to expand their footprint. I thank all of you for coming out and being here and paying attention and being involved. And I ask you to please help us take action. Lum Lumsh.
Thanks, Twyla. My name's Jim Letelier. I live in Liberty Lake now. Twyla, you were saying earlier about an area that was boxed in where they've been taking material to cap the mine. Am I correct in assuming that? You also said that as they took the overburden off, the material that they were getting to remediate the mine was also hot. It was contaminated. Am I correct in my understanding there?
Yeah, some of the areas that they're digging in where they assumed or in their planning, they didn't account for
contaminated soils. Okay, yeah. So Linda, I've been in the construction industry as a construction superintendent for over 40 years. I've done a lot of site development, associated with building buildings and whatnot, infrastructure work. So I can tell you that you cannot remediate a site with contaminated material. Now, maybe they didn't know, maybe the mining company didn't know that this material was contaminated. Maybe nobody did. But now, once they've taken this cover off of this land, you were saying that they're actually expanding the area that will have to be remediated now. It looks to me, this is my humble but accurate opinion, that this material, if they can't get it on site, they're going to have to import this material. They have to use proper soils to fix this, and it'll never get fixed from what I'm hearing you say. It will not happen. So I would just like to make that point while you're here.
And as a community, that was a major point that we tried to make as well, and that when they made these proposals for a topsoil, that the material was going to come from off the reservation. So it was a huge surprise to us that they were able to purchase this land in the reservation boundaries, because it sets a precedent. We normally don't allow corporations to purchase property on the reservation. There's been instances where companies have tried to come in, buy land, and develop that themselves, which was blocked by the tribe. So it's not something that we ever allowed before. In this instance, they allowed it because the company made and then EPA agreed that there would be less traffic instead of importing clean fill. And then what we're seeing at the Don Mill site is that they're trying to cover it with sandy soils. So again, they're clear cutting more and more area because they're using a very poor quality soil. And then that's why they're having to go so deep with it, because it doesn't have the clay, it doesn't have the properties that would needed for a cap, and they just are trying to do what's cheap and easy right next to the site.
So what can we do as people from Spokane, the city, to help support you and help the EPA move forward at expediting the cleanup? What can we do?
Thank you, Jacob, for that. That's where we're at in this agenda. So what can we do? What are some of the ideas that we have here to keep this moving and so we don't lose momentum?
Well, it seems to me that one of the issues is that this is a really complex process, and there are a lot of parts and pieces to this story. And so one of the things Spokane Riverkeeper would like to do is dedicate at least a page on our website for all these contacts, all of this information, so that up here in Spokane there is at least this place folks can come and learn more as it happens. I mean, Brian Cleary talked about, there are yet processes to be unpacked. And as things transpire that we can, that the community can get active and get engaged in, then we can post those updates. So SpokaneRiverkeeper.org will dedicate that space.
I'm David Brookbank. I don't know how or if this could happen, but we have other contaminated sites around the area. The PFOS/PFOA problem, the contamination of the aquifer by the BNSF Railroad in Idaho, which is now impacts our area. But there's another site that's not related to water, but it's a not fully remediated EPA Superfund site, not the highest level, but the next level, which is asbestos contaminated site at 1318 North Maple Street. And myself and Mike Peterson met a few years ago with the EPA site manager for that location, who essentially committed to us that they could do sort of a educational kiosk on that property. The piece of property was covered by the media kind of heavily in the early 2000 period by some very good investigative journalists for Spokesman Review who are no longer there. But it kind of has dropped away. They capped part of the site with asphalt as a way to kind of contain the asbestos, but there's a part of the site that's not finished, and there are other problems. It's not just contained, as we're talking about with this mine site. Some of that asbestos is not on that site. It's actually out in the neighborhood and things like that. So I just wonder, is there any precedent with your community outreach and community involvement staff and the EPA to do what the CPA site manager from Boise, when he was up and talked to Mike and I about, and I've never heard anything about it again, to be honest with you, but is there monies that you guys can contribute to community efforts, community-directed efforts, or collaborative efforts to educate the public about that site, where you guys would be, putting in money or et cetera towards community efforts to educate?
There have been times when we've been able to go back in and check into sites like that. If you could stop by before you leave today and get my card and give me more information about, the site and the address and whoever, the project manager that you worked with, I'll look into it and see if we can't follow up with that and get more information out to the neighbors and, find out what's going on there.
That would be great. Just to make clear, though, I was kind of taking that as an example and wondering if that similar kind of process could be applied to this site we're talking about now, where you guys this individual talked to us about a kiosk, an educational kiosk in that urban site. Now, this is a remote kind of tribal rural site, but
So it's possible. If that's what the community wants, we would do everything that we could to make sure that we got that there. I hesitate to say, oh, yes, we can do that because I'm not really up to speed on the site yet. But we want to work with the community and find out where they want information, especially the residents. And it looks like Brian has a little more information about that. But yeah, there are a lot of different ways that we can provide information and do the meaningful, involvement that we're required to do.
Is there any funding for technical support for communities?
I have that at the top of my list to look into and see if we can do more, especially to bring a technical advisor if that's, something that you guys want.
Yeah, I think a lot of times these reports, if you've ever seen the hard copies, it could probably take up about 3 or 4 storage units of just huge, huge reports and paperwork. So it's not fun to get on the mailing list for those things or even to search them online because they're humongous. So having anybody break it down at all is an extreme help, just especially in the case for this site.
So the problem with lawyers is once you get them to talk, then they won't shut up. But on this particular subject of community involvement and how best to maintain it, I would just reflect on the last time the EPA really had a rollout of where there was a lot of community engagement regarding this site. If you recall, back when obviously in 2006 with the record of decision, there was quite a public outreach for that, right? Then after you select the remedy, you have to design how you're going to implement it. So all the engineers sharpen their pencils, get their calculators out, and figure out how they're going to design this thing and actually implement it. That took several years. And it was rolled out probably like 4 years ago, I guess it was. So that was the next point in time, if you recall, where EPA had a really strong public outreach to announce what was the 100% remedial design. Actually, it was more like the 99.99% remedial design because the water treatment plant still needed some design issues dealt with. So that's the next point in time when EPA really took full court and did community engagement. I don't know if you recall, there were meetings, I think, in Wellpinit, and I think EPA even hired a facilitator to help with those meetings to really lay out good presentations of here's what the design calls for, here's what this means in the community. So now that was the design. Now we're in the RA, the remedial action. They're implementing the design. This issue with respect to background has been raised by the companies, and we've discussed that a little bit. But, in terms of community engagement and EPA's efforts, one thing I'd recommend is perhaps pick up from where you last left off with the public in those meetings where the remedial design was rolled out to the public, to explain to them, here's what's going to happen. Start from there, because there were some very good PowerPoint presentations that were put together for the community, and they identified things that on a continuing basis EPA would need to follow up with the community. Look at those things. Did you follow up with them? If not, maybe it wasn't that you needed to at the moment, but do you need to follow up now? So there's a roadmap here for that next step in community engagement. And I think on this ESD request, so-called ESD request, or questions about what the appropriate background is, update from EPA on that, that maybe helps describe that in terms of what the process is going on right now, and perhaps over what period of time or window, which is hard to establish, they're looking at that. And then more importantly, does this affect the current cleanup? Because my understanding is the answer is no. The companies are continuing to clean up. And remember, timelines are set under that consent decree and in the remedial design that they have to achieve. They miss those. Someone brought up fines and whatnot earlier. That's really baked into the consent decree that legally holds them liable. If they miss their obligations as they exist under this ROD and the remedial design, they miss those. There are consequences under the consent decree with penalties defined in there. So that is tracked down. The money doesn't come to the tribe, it comes to the United States. But there are penalties for missing deadlines, and they don't have any notes from the teacher right now to miss any of the deadlines that have been established. They've come up with this theory about background and how it should change, but nobody has said, wow, that's really interesting, and yes, that we're going to change it. No, nobody said anything like that. They're committed under the time schedule that's established in the CD and the remedial design, and they got to meet that or those fines kick in. So I don't want to sound like a lackey for the mining companies, because I'm not, but the bottom line is people thought through this. There is a process in place. It is playing out, and I understand why it's really concerning to be in the public and hear all of a sudden, gee, they're going to change the background level. That scratches on the nerve of be concerned, yes, but there's a lot more mileage on that road that needs to be run out before anyone even gets to making a decision like that. And from my perspective, in my opinion, it needs to be one that if they did make it, it has to be fully on the administrative record as part of a public process. So, as I said, once you get a lawyer talking, you can't shut them up. So I'll turn the mic off right now.
Purple girl? Purple flower girl? That's what I'm calling you right now, for reference. As a layman that's kind of new to the EPA process cleanup, I would like to reference Libby, Montana. Libby, Montana is a documentary about the EPA cleanup in the small town of Libby, Montana. So if you don't know about Libby, Montana, I'm sure you can Google it. And it was put on by PBS in 2007. So it says it's published on October 15th, 2015. This is a complete feature documentary about the community-wide asbestos exposure, the corporate cover-up, and the EPA cleanup in the small town of Libby, Montana. The film was nominated for a National Emmy Award in journalism and was also broadcast on the acclaimed PBS series POV, the American documentary, in 2007. Quote, definitely deserves Oscar consideration, unquote, Illinois Times. I'm not going to go on to the other critical acclaimed, things that happened because of this documentary, but I think this gives our non-tribal members a perspective of just how powerful your voice can be. And it shows how we can all work together to protect our water, because that is why I'm here. That's how I was raised, and I am here for my people, and you are all my people. And so that's what I have to say. So, thank you.
Thank you. And that's a great suggestion. We would love if there's any filmmakers out there that could kind of break this information down and, put it in a format that community members can understand. A lot of times these PowerPoints are, like you said, you're just about ready to fall asleep 5 minutes in. But if we could get a, 10, 15-minute video, that would be great and really help us get the message out about, just about the site, because we're, like Brian said, this water is going to be treated forever. So these loads of contaminated material are going to be traveling through Spokane forever as they're delivering this waste material to Utah or to wherever they're going to be treating and storing. So we do have an issue. We have long-term issues. And so it really helps that everybody here stays involved, that you continue to learn about it in your classes. For one thing, we didn't know about it. Our young people on the reservation didn't even know there was a mine site. I didn't know there was a mine site. So it's something that you can live on the reservation your whole life and not be able to see it from the highway. Now I think you can kind of see it from the highway, but it's so the more people learn about it, just asking questions, letting EPA know that you're interested, this is huge. So just having this meeting, having everybody here, lets the tribe, lets EPA know, lets the mining companies know that people are interested, people are watching. And we don't like their explanations sometimes, and we'll challenge them, so.
My name's Dave Brownigal. I'm a citizen of the Spokane tribe. And I was a councilman about 8 months ago. And I went to a lot of those meetings where Don Mining and all that Newmont was speaking, and Brian, and it's a game. It's about money. It's not about lives. It's not about water. It's about money. And who's got the money, who can drag it out the longest, that's who generally wins. Unless, of course, the people speak up. I remember back, it was quite a while ago, we had a meeting down in the federal building, outdoors. And there were a lot of people talking, and it had to deal with the runoff, going into the water and all this good stuff. And there were a number of farmers and ranchers on the fringe. And the Native American people were getting up and talking and expressing their views and opinions. And I noticed none of the farmers and ranchers were speaking because it was an open mic. So I got up and I said, the water goes down. It goes down the creek and goes into the river and it goes down the river. And guess what? You irrigate. And guess what? Give the water to your animals. And guess what? You eat the wheat and you eat the animals. I said, it's not staying on the reservation. It's going down the river to where you are. And they know who I was talking to. And after that, the mic opened up and the ranchers and farmers start speaking. So what I'm saying is, as long as it doesn't affect us, and as long as it's not in my backyard or my front yard, I'm not going to worry about it. That's how we are as human beings. It's your problem. It's your problem. Just don't bring it to my backyard. Right? But then when we start talking about how everything is connected, and if it hits my front yard, it's going to hit your backyard. And if it hits your backyard, it's going to hit your front yard. And that's what we're talking about. If I came in here and I didn't know anything about any of this, I'd go, oh, those poor Spokaneans. They sure have it rough. But it ain't affecting me. Well, guess what? Some of that wheat you're eating is affected. Some of that meat you're eating is affected. And once we start understanding that as human beings, then we get involved. And I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say this anyway. If you got the money and you're in the nice little tower, you're not going to worry about us. And that's what we're talking about. We're the us. We're the ones that are getting the sicknesses. We're the ones that are getting the cancer. We're the ones that's being affected. And those people in those little ivory towers, they don't realize it too, but they're being affected. But they don't see it because they got the money. And if Brian has the money and I don't have the money and we have to go to court, guess who's going to win? Brian. He's going to outlast me because I don't have that kind of money. But when we start standing together as concerned citizens of the United States, as well as the citizens of the Spokane tribe, then we can cause things to happen. Because we together are more powerful than they are. You know, the vote, the letters. I never used to be a telephone call, letter writing kind of guy. But I realized, you know, if I speak up, that's one voice. Brian speaks up, that's two voices. And when you talk about the elections and all that, guess what? The people are listening to the voices. And we have so many of these issues going on right now, we could be overrun with issues upon issues upon issues, but guess what? It's all the same issue. It's our life. It's our children's life. I have 2 great-grandchildren. I told my wife last month, I said, you know, the only thing we can do now is let them know what's coming down the pike, because it's coming down. And to deal with it, prepare for it, and battle it, and do whatever they have to do, because we're not going to be here. But if we sit back, if I sit back and I don't do anything, and if my kids ask their parents and ask their grandparents, what did our great-grandfather do? Because his generation caused all this. I'd like to have them say, your great-grandfather fought. So when I go to bed, I'm guilt-free. So we need to fight. How much? Thank you.
As an activist, one of the things I was coming up with a different thing, but I'm going to relate it to here, is I was trying to get people motivated to have a billboard, and so I called it the Billboard Place, and I was thinking that it would be a good suggestion to raise money to have a billboard of this thing, you know, in the city, so that people can see, because it's about raising awareness. And I don't like the John Birch Society, but when I was a kid, I used to see their sign, John Birch Society, you know, so I know that advertising works. And billboards, I called up the sign company, and they said, like, the kind you see pretty much around town are like $800 a month. That's, you know, that's, I make just a little bit more than that, not much, but I'm in poverty, but I know that amount of money can take and contribute to awareness, you know, and it's just something to think about, you know, not saying anybody, but it does work, because I'm looking at Deborah's picture up there. That could be on a billboard.
It might just be. Oh, Jeff just raised his hand. He has billboards coming.
Just going to be a minute here. I am happy, first of all, that everybody came out here today. This really is an inspiring crowd. There's a lot of things that I've seen. You know, I did that video on the Midnite Mine, and that was over 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago, and it's still not clean. We are just now getting ready to go into March, and I think we've buried 6 tribal members on the res so far. More than that this year. That's crazy. That's just crazy. And you know, one thing we've seen is that as Indian people, we stand up, we look for the things that are injustices, especially when it comes to environment. But we've seen how long it can take for things to happen, but we've also learned that we can't do all of this alone. You know, back in 2016, a lot of us went to Standing Rock. I talk about Standing Rock because a lot of people in Indian country still live there. They still live in that moment, and that was something that was so historic. You take half a dozen of Native youth from one reservation that saw some injustice on another reservation, and they were able to snowball their efforts in the period of a school year, in 9 months, to the point that the city of Seattle divested $1 billion from Wells Fargo because of what they did. Imagine what we could do with all the people in this room. I mean, you're talking half a dozen kids there. The one thing that I saw in my trips to Standing Rock, and still now to this day, is how we suffer from not being heard. Indigenous people all around the world, and especially in our country, have had our voices hushed and hushed and hushed. I shudder to think of what the impact those kids would have had if mainstream media would have embraced their efforts. If we didn't have our cell phones being jammed from Facebook Hill at Ocheti, if we would have had the support of all of the non-native community out there doing that, the things that could have happened could be amazing, and it still can be. And I believe, I'm here because I believe that this thing will get cleaned up. But not just this one. There's other things out there, and we all need to think about that. But by being able to come together and make the effort, we may not all make every meeting, but coming out to the meetings that we can, and sharing what we can, and sharing what we know, that's how it's going to get done. So often I see Indian people at the forefront. When they pulled the oil rig into Puget Sound, you know, how many canoes were out there to meet those guys? You know, those kind of things. But then again, we get pushed to the back. I want to ask this, just out of curiosity, who here saw the video of Grand Central Station at Standing Rock when they stopped the trains at Grand Central Station in New York? Did anybody see that? I saw it. I was watching on Facebook, and this lady got up at the stairs in Grand Central Station, and she panned the crowd. It was so full of protesters for the Dakota Access Pipeline that they shut down the trains at Grand Central Station. And I spent the entire rest of that day looking for all over Facebook, trying to find that video again. As fast as it got up and as fast as she showed it, they took it down. And that's what we're faced with when we're facing Newmont, when we're facing Dawn Mining, when we're facing all of these different organizations out there, whether it's governmental or corporations. But we can't do it alone. We need our non-native neighbors to step up and be heard when nobody's listening to us. That would help things go so much quicker. So that's all I wanted to say. I'm going to work on a follow-up to that video, and I'm hoping that we can show some progress in that. So thank you, Twila. Thank you, Marco. My video is the Midnite Mine on YouTube. So
We'll post it to the event page.
I just wanted to take some time and thank everyone for coming. This has been a long journey for all of us and our tribal people, that we've gone through many changes, and we've also stood still as a result of what went on around us. And when you're born into a toxic environment, and when you're disenfranchised by the levels of oppression that have continued to face Native communities, there is a difficulty in making headway. And I think tonight we have some great people here, especially, you know, who do good work, who care about the earth and humanity. And that's the people we need by our side. Lands Council, thank you for being here. River Keepers, thank you for being here. There are many others. The Washington Tenants Union, Washington State Tenants Union is here. There are others, and I'm just forgetting. But I do want to thank everyone, because it's true what he's just spoke to, that we do need allies to stand beside us in these battles, because the level of expertise that comes when everybody pulls together, it is powerful, it is meaningful, and it does help not only our people, but it helps the lands and the waters, the air. And I really hope that EPA, you understand, and I'm glad that Brian Cleary, in terms of what you had to say, that don't start all over again. Don't start all over again with us. Start where we left off, because it took 6 years to negotiate that community involvement plan. We were involved with that all the way through. And I think it's really important that with your help to keep us on task, because it's been really good to have river keepers on board. It's just made it so much easier. And thank you, Margot, for the space. Thank you, Director of Legal Services, right? The Legal Center here in Spokane. So I really feel good about not only having our elders here, having Dave here as a former councilman. I really appreciate that we have Carol Evans, who is our councilwoman, and she's doing such a fantastic job. And we've lost family, many of us on the reservation, and I start just listing names just off the head, and sometimes it doesn't come that great, right now. But there's name after name on the people we lost, different age levels. Some were former workers, some were women who stayed at home and cleaned the clothing for the former workers. And so we've gone decades of loss, and we're seeing far more now. Yet there's not been any health studies conducted that are comprehensive enough to be able to establish a need. Establishing need scientifically has been one of the shortfalls in this process. And I am really thankful that the tribe is really taking a strong stance with this particular issue. But like Brian Cleary said, it's just one of the beginnings, and there are so many other things that still need to go on. So again, I thank you. I thank my daughter. I watched her today put that together. Baby comes up, and it was so great. And then, just putting everything together. And that's what we have to do, is the next generation takes it over. The next generation takes it over. And that's what we want to see happen. So Carol, I thank you for being here, and if you would like to say anything, it'd be appreciated. So again, thank you everyone for coming, taking the time out, and learning about this, and I hope you continue forward with us in however it works out. We're going to fight this. They just made themselves the largest gold mining corporation in the world by spending $10 billion merging with Goldcorp. And if they even whine about a dime here to take care of our needs, that's pretty harsh. And so we want to make sure that maybe they will be buying us water. I would really hope so. So thank you.
Good evening. As Deb stated, I'm on the Spokane Tribal Council, the chairwoman for the tribe. Just honored to be here with all of you, and really thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for coming together for such an important thing for not only the Spokane people, the Spokane people, but for everyone. Everyone, like is stated here, what goes around comes around. What happens up here in Spokane affects us downriver. What happens somewhere downwind, it affects everyone. And so the only way to really hit it hard is us coming together and standing up for what we know is right. And what is right? It's honoring and respecting one another. It's remembering that this land, this air, this water, it's a gift to us. It's not ours to take and abuse and abuse and abuse and not give back. It's a gift. And I know that my ancestors knew this, and they never took more than they needed, and they always shared. And so, and I know your ancestors also. You go back far enough, you know that. And so I just really am honored to be here to hear the good dialogue, the good questions, and I just, boy, EPA, I hope you guys stay around. I really hope you stay around and we're not hearing through the grapevine that we got two new EPA people next month. You know, I'm just kind of adding humor because I do appreciate you being here and addressing the people, meeting with Tribal Council today. That's important because being able to talk, you know, one-on-one and with a group is important. But most of all, I want to thank Debbie, Twala, Pat, Brian, and Brian, where are you? Brian, way back, the guy that can talk forever. Thank you for sticking with it and holding the company, holding them to what they're supposed to do. You know, to me, this coming to this rod and this judge making the decision and deciding what we're going to do, followed by their plan, that's important. That means stuff, and they just can't willy-nilly out there change things. And so I really appreciate all of you standing up, Shawl Society through the years, just really educate, and really empowering the community, because it's really what the community, it's the community that matters and what they say, and we just need to listen. We need to listen to the community, and we need to find a way to make what their wishes are happen, because all I am is a servant. I'm a servant of the people. I'm no someone sitting up here like it said in the tower. We need to listen to the people, and if we do that, and if we really truly listen and put that into our plans, we can make things happen, and we can do that together. So I just wanted to thank you all. Thank you for this meeting. Thank you, David. Good to see you. We'll get a powwow sometime in the future. And, you know, that's another thing. The things we do, we love powwows. And so we've been planning a powwow for our birthday. We had to cancel because of deaths and respect for our elders, and we canceled another one. But that's what we do out of respect. But, you know, there will be a time that we'll come together again and we'll have a powwow. Maybe it'll be in April. I don't know. I heard a little bird come to me today and say, I want to do a powwow in April. So anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you, Debbie, Twala, and all of you for sharing good words and all of the people coming together, because it matters. She'uho elamamch.
I'm Mary Stamp, and I edit the Fig Tree, and I've heard a number of your voices, and I will follow up and connect with you. I often am chasing after Deb and Twala, but you know, I hear many other voices, and I will keep in touch, and you can call me when you would like. But I have some of your words from tonight, and I will share them, and I'll get your emails and send them back so that I'm sure I'm saying it the way you want it.
I'm Jen Haywood. I'm the convener of the Faith Leaders and Leaders of Conscience, and I'm the voice on our chairwoman's voicemail. I've been contacting about partners, would like to partner with all those who are interested. I've already met with the Coeur d'Alene. I already have a person coming from Newport. We're going to have a vigil for the healing of the earth on Earth Day. I am still working to get the permits, but if you would like to help partner in that, please do speak with me. I can quickly give you, before my car is illegal out there, I could quickly pass off some information to you. And hope, please do, put April 22nd, Earth Day, on your calendar. We were trying to draw awareness to the Superfund site of how pollution doesn't know boundaries, and our river is polluted from Kellogg through Spokane. We are right here on the largest Superfund site in the nation. So thank you for letting me do that.